Alright, today I'm testing a hangar that is built to be annoying first and pretty much everything else second. The idea is pretty simple. Every build here is supposed to mess with the enemy's timing before I try to kill them. Jammer, freeze, stun, slow, mark, EMP, all of that irritating stuff. If this works, fights should feel unfair before the damage even starts. If it doesn't work, then I basically brought 5 clever-looking builds and discovered that clever is not the same thing as good. For this kind of test, I want actual beacon pressure. Sometimes you get a lobby where your hangar just runs over people and the video proves nothing except that matchmaking had a funny moment. CPC usually gives a better read on whether the build can hold space, stop pushes, and survive normal chaos. The hangar is around 12.7k squad power in this recording. I lowered the modules to keep the power down. With proper legendary modules, this would be more like an 18k plus hangar, and that is not the match range I wanted for this video. Small warning though, squad power tuning is not a lab test. It is more like boxing weight classes, where the game refuses to tell you exactly where the weight class starts and ends. I tried to keep this reasonable, but I still ran into a player around 16k in the footage. So when something looks strange, yeah, that can happen. Mech Arena does Mech Arena things. And if you see me start with Zephyr, that is not because I think Zephyr is the perfect CPC opener. I started with it because I wanted to show it. Zephyr rarely appears in my videos, and even after I tried to level the hangar around it, it was still the weakest slot. I had a legendary perimeter ML, only around level 3 on it, and it still lagged behind the rest. So this is a showcase choice, not some secret pro opener that everybody missed for 5 years. Let's talk about that build first, because it is probably the one people will look at and immediately ask why. Zephyr with Hornet is weird, but there is a reason for it. Zephyr's problem is not that the ability is useless. The ability can still be nasty. The problem is that modern Mech Arena is much faster and much more punishing than the game Zephyr was built for. If you walk straight into the open like it's 2021, you are just donating a mech. So the whole build is trying to avoid that. I use 3 ability implants: radius, duration, and cooldown. That brings the stun radius from 30 meters to 45, and the stun lasts 4 seconds instead of 3. That is a big difference. At 30 meters, Zephyr has to get way too close. At 45, you can actually play around cover and make people afraid to push into you. Hornet helps because it does not force Zephyr to stand in the street and trade shots like a normal brawler. You can play corners, you can curve shots, you can punish someone who is stunned or slowed without fully exposing yourself every time. Also, Hornet is not super greedy with implants, and Zephyr already needs the implant slots for the ability. That matters more than people think. Is this the best Zephyr build? Probably not. If I wanted pure kill pressure, I could make other arguments. But for this video, the job is not to turn Zephyr into a monster. The job is to see whether it can interrupt a push, steal a beacon timing, and maybe make one enemy regret walking into the wrong area. That is a fair job for Zephyr. It is not a glamorous job. It is not going to make anyone uninstall the game. But if it buys 4 seconds at the right time, that can be enough. Tailsting with Howler is the cleanest version of the whole idea. This one makes sense immediately. Tailsting lands signal jammer, the target loses weapon use and ability options, and Howler gets a few seconds where the enemy cannot properly answer back. That is exactly what Howler wants, because Howler has damage, but it can feel awkward when shields and movement are working against you. The big Howler problem is multi-layer shields. You can have good damage and still feel like you're shooting paperwork. The layers eat too much of the value, the target keeps moving, and suddenly the weapon that looked scary in the garage feels less impressive in a real fight. Tailsting changes that. Under the jammer, the enemy is locked into a bad moment. They cannot shoot back normally. They cannot use the ability to escape or punish. A lot of the damage pressure starts becoming much more real because the target is not freely playing the game anymore. That is why I like the pairing. It is not just 2 strong things sitting together. The mech creates the exact kind of fight the weapon wants. Howler needs a window. Tailsting creates the window. The only catch is that you still have to land it before the enemy gets value. If you fire the jammer late, or you waste it on the wrong target, then Howler has to win, honestly. And honestly is not always Howler's favorite place to be. Blizzfrost with Gemini is the one I think people might underrate at first glance. Gemini is guided, and guided weapons have a very obvious problem. Fast mechs do not politely stay at the correct distance. Surge jumps you. Eclipse appears in your face. Nomad decides personal space is not real. Then your guided setup starts looking very sad very quickly. Blizzfrost helps with that because Icy Grip is an anti-dive tool. If someone tries to enter your space, you can freeze that entry, stop the movement, and give Gemini time to actually work. That is the point. I am not saying Gemini is suddenly the best possible Blizzfrost weapon. I am saying Blizzfrost is a good chassis for this kind of guided setup because it protects the weapon from one of its biggest problems. The Eclipse interaction is especially nice. Eclipse can be a nightmare for guided weapons because stealth breaks the normal rhythm of locking and shooting. But if Eclipse dives into Blizzfrost and gets caught, the whole fight changes. The stealth advantage is gone, the movement is ruined, and Gemini can actually do its job. That kind of pairing is more interesting to me than just asking which weapon has the biggest number in the stat screen. A lot of builds look good until you ask one boring question: what happens when the enemy gets close? Blizzfrost has a real answer. I still don't know if Gemini would be my final pick for a serious Blizzfrost build. Maybe not. But for a Control Hangar, it fits better than it looks. It gives range, pressure, and it benefits a lot from the freeze. That is enough reason to try it. Citadel with Compound Beam is just unpleasant, which is exactly why it is here. Citadel already makes movement annoying. The ability slows enemies, interferes with their ability flow, gives Citadel speed, and makes it harder to punish while it is active. Then Compound Beam adds more slow and control pressure on top of that, so that the build is basically asking the enemy to fight while walking through glue. I like this for CPC because beacon fights are often decided by who enters the area cleanly. If a surge gets in cleanly, bad things happen. If a Nomad reaches you with full timing, bad things happen. If someone has to enter slowly, take damage, lose ability value, and then try to fight while stuck, that is a very different fight. Citadel being fast during the ability is the important part. A slow control mech can be annoying, but the enemy can often choose not to deal with it. A fast control mech can bring the problem to you. It can push the zone onto a beacon, follow a target, and make the enemy waste time trying to leave. Compound Beam is not here because I think it is the flashiest weapon in the game. It is here because it fits the question: can I keep the target trapped in a bad fight long enough for the damage to matter? Also, Citadel not caring about some of the usual disable nonsense is very useful. In a hangar built around control, having one slot that can push through enemy control is a nice safety valve. Otherwise, you can get into that awkward situation where both players are trying to disable each other and nobody is actually winning the fight. Then we have Orion with EM Rifle, which is the least complicated slot. I like having one simple answer in a hangar like this. Orion marks something, EM Rifle tries to remove it. That is the whole pitch. It does not need a documentary. Hunter's Mark is still one of the cleanest ways to turn a target into a problem that needs to disappear immediately. With EM Rifle, you get that long-range punish. Sometimes it deletes the mech. Sometimes it leaves the target low enough that the next touch finishes it. Either way, it gives the hangar a direct threat. That matters because a Control Hangar can become too cute. You slow people, stun people, freeze people, jam people, and then somehow nobody dies. At that point, you are not controlling the match. You are decorating it. Orion keeps the lineup honest. It gives me a way to say, that target is the problem. That target goes now. Of course, Orion still has normal Orion problems. If you mark the wrong target, you waste the moment. If stealth ruins your timing, annoying. If EM Rifle decides the shot is not going to be as clean as you wanted, also annoying. But even with those issues, Orion gives this hangar something important, a punishment button. So the question for the match is not just, can these builds get kills? They can. The better question is whether the control effect actually turns into practical value. Tailsting is the easy example. If the jammer lands and Howler gets the kill before the target can answer, great. That is exactly the build. Blizzfrost is more about stopping the dive before it turns into damage. Zephyr can have a useful moment even without a highlight kill, if it catches someone near a beacon and buys enough time. Citadel is looking for those ugly fights where the enemy wants to leave but can't leave cleanly. Orion is just trying to pick the right target and make it disappear. But there is a very easy way for this hangar to become fake value. You can use abilities and still lose the fight. You can stun somebody who was not dangerous. You can freeze a bot while the real player is taking the beacon. You can jam a mech that already spent its damage. You can mark the wrong target and feel smart for about 1 second before the actual threat kills you. That is the part I like about this test. It is not just damage math. You actually have to choose the right problem, and sometimes the right problem is not the mech standing directly in front of you. In CPC, that matters more than people admit. A lot of players get obsessed with damage, but non letting SARS. Train tai, shite SARS, signing to not time sa only in a day. Amounts a non base train dam sign points. Red Chin by Dykes. If the unsigned time, the enemy control centers. If your team is late to the side beacon, if the real player keeps picking your bots for free, you can have a beautiful damage build in and still lose the map. Control helps when it changes the timing of those fights. You are not trying to win a spreadsheet. You are trying to make the enemy push arrive broken. Now, I do want to be careful here, because control is not magic. If you waste cooldowns, you're cooked. If you walk into 3 angles because your ability is ready and you feel brave, you're cooked. If you think a stun makes you immortal, the game will correct you very quickly. Zephyr is probably the best warning label for that. With the implants, it has a purpose. Without them, I would not recommend trying to copy this and expecting miracles. Radius and duration are doing a lot of work. The difference between 30 meters and 45 meters is not a small comfort upgrade. It changes where the mech can stand. Tailsting has this same kind of dependency, but in a different way. The jammer is the fight. If you miss it, or if you waste it on something that was not going to hurt you anyway, the build becomes much less scary. Tailsting with Howler feels great when the opening is clean. When the opening is not clean, you start noticing every shield layer again. Blizzfrost is more forgiving because the mech itself is strong. Even if Gemini is not perfect, Icy Grip gives you a lot of control over the engagement, but you still want to use it early enough. If Surge already hit you, if Eclipse already got the flank, if Nomad already crashed into your face, then freezing after that is more like damage control. Citadel can trick you because it feels safe while the ability is up. It has speed, it has control, it has defensive value, so you start thinking you can just bully the map. Sometimes you can. Sometimes you push into too many guns and discover that being annoying is not the same as being invincible. Orion is the most familiar, but even there, the target choice is everything. Marking a random mech is easy. Marking the mech that actually changes the fight is the part that matters. That is why I like full hangar tests more than single build tests sometimes. A single build can look amazing in the right clip. A full hangar has to survive the boring parts too. Bad spawn, awkward map, wrong enemy, cooldown not ready, bot doing bot things. The hangar has to keep functioning anyway. The module setup also changes how I read this footage. Since I lowered modules, I am not just tanking everything for free. That makes the control windows more important. If I get caught, I can still die. That is good for the test. I don't want to make a video where the real lesson is max legendary modules are strong. We already know that. Congratulations, the expensive thing is expensive for a reason. At the same time, this is not a low investment setup. Full pilots and implants are a huge part of why this works. I don't want someone with half-built pilots, missing implants, and random modules to copy the idea and then think the hangar lied to them. The concept is control. The execution still needs investment. the strongest slot for me is probably Tailsting with Howler. That one just feels natural. You jam the target and Howler gets the kind of fight it wants. If I were making a serious control hangar, that build stays. Citadel with Compound Beam also feels very on theme. It is not always the fastest kill, but it makes enemy movement miserable. And in CPC, that can be more important than people think. A mech that cannot reach the fight properly is already losing part of the fight. Blizzfrost with Gemini surprised me in a good way. I still think there are more standard options, but I like the way the mech protects the weapon. If a build has an answer to its own weakness, I respect that. Orion is Orion. There is not much drama there. It gives the hangar a ranged delete button, and I think this kind of lineup needs that. If every slot needs close control to work, you can get trapped by maps and angles. Orion gives you a different way to solve a fight. Zephyr is the question mark. I don't think it becomes meta because of this. I don't think people should suddenly rush to build Zephyr Hornet. But it did the job I wanted it to do, and honestly, for Zephyr in 2026, that is already a pretty good day. The bigger takeaway is that control builds are strongest when they are paired with a weapon that immediately uses the window. A stun with no follow-up is just a delay. A slow with no pressure is just rude movement commentary. A jammer with no burst behind it is annoying, but not scary enough. That is why Tailsting Howler works better than it might sound on paper. That is why Citadel Compound Beam makes sense. That is why Zephyr needs Hornet to play from safer angles. The control effect has to connect to the weapon plan, and that is also why raw damage hangers are still easier to build. Damage is simple. You point at the problem and try to erase it. Control asks for timing. If the timing is bad, the whole thing looks worse than the stats suggest. I don't think this hangar is top 1 meta. I don't think that is the point. The point is that the difference between top 1 and top 20 is often smaller than people act like, especially when the build has a clear job and the player knows why it exists. If you only chase the highest damage option every time, you can end up with 5 builds that all want the same kind of fight. That can work, but it can also make the hangar feel flat. A control slot can give you an answer to a situation your damage build hates. For example, if rush mechs keep ruining your day, maybe you need anti-dive. If beacon fights feel impossible because enemies keep arriving first, maybe you need something that slows the entry. If shield layers keep eating your burst, maybe you need a build that disables the target before the trade starts. That is more useful than just saying, use better weapons. In this video, the hangar worked better than I expected. It still has obvious weaknesses. It depends on cooldowns. It depends on implants. It can absolutely throw a match if I use the wrong ability on the wrong target, but it feels like a real idea, not just a themed meme. Tailsting feels dangerous. Blizzfrost feels stable. Citadel feels annoying in the correct way. Orion gives the lineup a clean punish. Zephyr is still Zephyr, but with the right implants and a weapon that lets it avoid full exposure, it can at least show up and do something useful. So yeah, full control hangar, not the strongest thing I can possibly build, but definitely not fake. If I were trying to make the most serious version, I would probably keep Tailsting, Citadel, Blizzfrost, and Orion as the core idea, then treat Zephyr as the funny old slot that gets invited when I want to prove it can still do something. And honestly, if Zephyr gets one good moment on camera, that is already more than I expected from the side quest.
Victory imminent. Dominating. Well done. Humiliation. damage. Killing spree. We're losing the lead. Well done. Fire. Well done. Double kill. Well done. Fire. Running out of time. Boom! Incoming fire. Revenge. Well done. Incoming fire. Killing spree. There is 1 minute left. Defeat. Go. Get out of my way. We're losing the lead. Incoming fire. have taken the lead. Incoming fire. Beacon captured. Beacon captured. Incoming fire. You have 2 minutes remaining. Victory imminent. You have won the match. Three, 2, 1, go. Let's get things started. We're losing the lead. Beacon captured. Incoming fire. We have taken the lead. Identified. Boom! Incoming fire. Losing the lead. Identified. Beacon captured. We have taken the lead. Incoming fire. Identified. Killing spree. Well done. Revenge. Well done. Killing spree. Well done. Humiliation. Well done. Fire. Cover. Boom. Victory imminent. Dominating. You have 2 minutes remaining. Beacon captured. You have won the match. 3, 2, 1, go. Let's get things started. We have taken the lead. Double KO. Well done. Fire. Revenge. Well done. Double damage. Infantry fire. Cover me. Victory imminent. Noob identified. Incoming fire. Critical damage. You have won the match. We're losing the lead. Incoming fire. Incoming fire. Identified. Beacon captured. Beacon captured. Incoming fire. Incoming fire. Incoming fire. Critical damage. Incoming fire. Noob identified. Incoming fire. Revenge. Well done. Killing spree. Well done. Humiliation. Well done. Dominating. Well done. Big humiliation. Well done. Double kill. Well done. Smooth operation identified. Unstoppable. Well done. Humiliation. Well done. We have taken the lead. You have 2 minutes remaining. You have won the match.